Yep.
He's got a gun. He's like, I'm going to shoot your tractor. And he's like, man, what fellas got to eat? $3 a day is what they pay me to do this tractor.
Yep.
But that $3 a day, and this comes up numerous times throughout the book, puts hundreds of people out of work. This one tractor. So
yeah, this guy's thinking about his wife and kid. You know, he's got a wife and a kid and himself, and he's making $3 a day, which is okay money.
Okay money.
You do the math on that. That works out to like $100 a day now. And
it's not great money.
It's not great, but it'll do. You know,
you can make it work.
You can make it work on that, and yeah. But you're literally dooming the whole the neighborhood that you're working in. You know? It's brutal.
Yeah. So then they get on the road. And there's a bunch of real vignettes about like being on the road and having to deal with store owners and all this other kind of stuff and what it's like to have people like, you know, there was one thing about the guy putting the thumb on the scales for the meat and all that kind of stuff and all that stuff. So, but then they're getting on the road and the first thing to go, like at their very first major stop, the dog gets run over on the highway.
On the highway.
And
the store owner comes out and he's like, man, I lost $3 to that highway. Like, I don't have dogs anymore.
Right. Progress. Right, obviously feels like a metaphor to me.
Absolutely.
And right after that, Grandpa goes. Grandpa dies. Grandpa, by the way, wanted to stay with Muley. He actually fought them tooth and nail. He's like, I want to stay. I don't want to leave.
For the first like 3 days, he's so excited, and all he's talking about is how he's just gonna pick grapes off of the vines when he gets to California, because there's just oranges and grapes, and he's just gonna constantly be eating grapes. He's just gonna he can't wait.
Juice is gonna run down my face.
And the night before they're about to leave, he doesn't go to sleep because he can't imagine leaving actually.
Right, yeah, he can't actually. So he's trying, and they end up, what did they get him? They got him real drunk.
They dose him.
Dose him.
They slip him a Mickey and put him in the truck.
And then tie him up and then put him in the truck, and then he wakes up, and then he never really recovers after he's like, I kind of think it's kind of like he was so depressed about it, he just kind of dies.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Well, and I think it's kind of that's a metaphor. Like the dog is a metaphor for like what costs progress. Grandpa's a metaphor for like what happens when you take someone who is part of the land away from that land.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
They just die.
Yeah. Well, and then there is a vignette not long after that talks about how, you know, the people who survive are the farmers who buy up more farms. They consolidate farms. They get, you know, thousands and thousands of acres. And they mention later one guy got 1 million acres.
What's he do with that?
What is he going to do with 1 million acres, right? Casey says, like, if you have to get 1 million acres, clearly something's wrong with your soul.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You're so stuck in greed and dissatisfied. And then, but like, there's also this discussion of like displacement from the land. You don't have that connection to the land anymore. And so I think Grandpa's death is like feeding into this kind of idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, they talk about tractors like a tank crawling over the land.
They also have a nice point later on where they're like, if you were doing this responsibly and ethically, the tractor isn't a bad thing.
No.
You know, it's not the tractor's fault. It's the fact that it's being piloted by someone who doesn't care and being sponsored by a soulless bank.
Right. And so then the banks, of course, because they're consolidating all the land. So if the bank doesn't own the land, it owns the loans on the land. And it talks about, you know, it just keeps consuming and consuming. And so what you get is a consolidation of these kind of big agro-businesses now. These people are dispossessed, and the people who really survive are the ones who build things like canneries on their land, and then they can the peaches, and they talk about the peaches don't go bad if they're canned and all this other stuff.
So it's not, there's less waste there, which is true.
Which is true, right?
Because there's also a brutal part later on where they burn the peaches. And it's fucking heartbreaking.
Yeah, there's a vignette later where people, like the laborers, are working and they're just trying to survive, and they're paid so little wages they can't even afford to buy food. You know, you got company store situations going on, overcharging, all this kind of stuff, and like, they're just watching as like, oh, these peaches are bruised. We can't can them. We can't use them. So they just dumped kerosene on this. And it's like, I just got so angry.